everyone, and welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Today, what a thrill! We've got two of the biggest influencers in the manufacturing space joining us. We got Jake Hall, otherwise known as the Manufacturing Millennial, one of the most recognized voices in modern manufacturing, especially on LinkedIn, in the wearer of many Cubs baseball hats. And then Chris Lukey, the host of Manufacturing Happy Hour, top rated podcast and media platform where industry leaders share insights and leadership, technology, and growth in manufacturing. And my personal entry into manufacturing is in large part thanks to Chris Lukey, who I met many years ago on LinkedIn and started sharing his content. He shared some of mine and got to really become part of this very cool manufacturing community. Guys, thanks for joining me today.
Man, it's great to be back with you, Greg. It's one of those things we don't see enough at the events in person. So being able to have these discussions it's always a blast.
Yeah, great way to, I guess, kick off the afternoon now that we're entering the lunchtime hours. So this
Well,
will be
it's one of those
fun.
things too. Is we saw each other at the beginning of the year, back in January in Austin, and now we're kind of wrapping up the year as well. So kind of opening and closing 2025 together.
Bookends. Yeah, I love it. I know I got to get out more. I need to find some dog care so I can get out and see you fellers a little bit more.
They just need to make trade shows have doggy daycare at the trade show.
Oh, do they? Okay.
No, they need to. They need to.
Oh, they need to, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just have to figure out how to get the killer chihuahua on an airplane, but a whole nother story. So, Jake, let's just start good on the line here. But Jake, tell us a little bit about your personal journey and how you became such an influencer on LinkedIn and in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, my passion since I was a kid is always talking to people. I love communication. I love telling stories. I love pitching ideas. In fact, right here, I don't know if you can see it, right in the middle, right above my head is the marketing award back in 2006 when I was a high school robotics team. And like for me, I've always had a love for creating content and ideas. What we were doing then is we were creating documents and videos and pictures to bring to our sponsors to get money to sponsor our high school robotics teams to go to tournaments and to travel and cover expenses. And so for me, my passion's always been people. Now, my father told me when I was graduating from high school, he says, don't go get a business degree. Those are a dime a dozen. Go become an engineer who likes to talk. And he says, that's where you'll find a lot of love for it. So went to college, got the degree, spent years in the industry. And then for me, an opportunity came, where a lot of people know during the pandemic where I'm more on LinkedIn. This guy who was on the call with us was actually one of the guys that inspired me to do what I do. I was out there talking to someone, and then someone said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Chris Lukey before?" And back in this would have been March or April of 2020. I ran across Chris's YouTube channel with him playing guitar, doing the COVID mock-up. What was the COVID cover that you did, Chris?
There's a famous Bowling for Soup song called 1985. So I wrote a spoof version of that song and called it COVID 1985.
Yeah. So that was one of my first ever introductions to Chris. And for me, it was one of those things where I realized more people need to tell the story in manufacturing from an exciting, engageable, authentic way. And fast forward 5 years, it's now my full-time gig, which is it's an absolute blessing to be able to travel around the country and post on social media and highlight what our industry is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jake, when I first met you, I think you were in a sales position and using LinkedIn to kind of get your word out. But I'm like, this guy is not just a salesperson. This guy is like natural born marketer. So that's interesting. You bring up your background. Chris, let's hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so there's some similarities between my story and Jake's story. I went to engineering school to get an engineering degree. And as I got towards the end of it, I'm like, I don't want to be behind a desk all day. So out of college, 2009, got a role as a sales engineer for Rockwell Automation and spent really the first decade of my career in the automation space on the commercial side of things. And about halfway through that time frame, this would have been around 2016, I was just so tired of all the buzzwords that everyone used in our industry. I'm like, we got to talk about this stuff in a different way, more candid, just more real and straightforward, as if we're having a beer with one another, right? And that's where the idea of manufacturing happy hour was born. What started as like a short form video series where I'd drink a beer and talk with someone about automation technology evolved into what manufacturing happy hour really is today, which is a leadership podcast disguised as a manufacturing podcast, long form content that allows me to feature timeless insights, current insights from the best and brightest in the manufacturing industry. So it's really a platform to showcase a lot of the individuals that make this industry great.
And Chris, your natural ability is, if you weren't in manufacturing, you'd be in a broadcast booth somewhere because you just have that silky smooth delivery and you're really a really good interviewer. And I can tell you take a lot of pride in that and put a lot of effort into that. And kudos for leveraging your drinking problem and turning a negative into a positive. It's just brilliant brilliant marketing on your end.
There's no other state that has a higher capita of drinking than Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, that is true. And since
Actually,
sometimes
no, man, North Dakota actually beats Wisconsin, but that's just because there's only 5 people in North Dakota, and every single one of them drinks. Other than that, Wisconsin is the heaviest beer drinking per capita.
Hey man, you gotta get through these winters somehow. But all right, guys, that's enough about us. Let's get into the problem at hand. How to use digital to attract today's manufacturing workforce. And I threw this comment out. We were talking a little bit before the show, folks, about how we're all big fans and we understand the positive nature and the impact of getting on LinkedIn and sharing your story. But a lot of people want to see what the problem is that getting on LinkedIn solves and becoming an influencer. Like most people have no desire to become an influencer. They'd rather not show up on LinkedIn. There's some real tangible benefits. And for manufacturing, one of the biggest ones can be how to attract today's manufacturing workforce. And Chris, I'm going to start out with you because when I threw this idea out there, you were all over it and very excited to talk about it. Why?
Yeah, I think this is a great topic. And you're right. Most people wake up and they don't want to spend every waking hour on social media, or they don't want to make sharing insights and creating their own podcast. They don't want to make that their career. So I think that's why there's some hesitation for some folks to go, I was going to say all in on a platform like LinkedIn, but even just halfway, right? I think there's this misconception sometimes that maybe inadvertently set by individuals like myself that are just so in it because it's turned into such a significant part of our career. So I want to be clear, like anyone can jump on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform it is where your audience is hanging out. And that's why I think this talk is so important today, because if, let's say, you're an executive at a manufacturing company, at the end of the day, your job, let's say you're the CEO. I mean, you need to hit your revenue targets. You need to make sure, if it's a public company, shareholders are getting their return. You need to make sure your people are treated well, because if they're not, they're going to leave. And then, hey, if you don't have the workforce you need to run your business, you're in a lot of trouble. LinkedIn can be a tool to help you amplify your values, what your company is all about, stories you've learned from other people. You can amplify that through a platform like LinkedIn on a regular basis. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in a second, so I'll keep this part brief. Some of the pushback that I often get on that, it's like, well, I don't want to make this platform all about me, right? I care about the people on my team. I want to focus on them. And if you're an executive, you can absolutely use a platform like LinkedIn as a way to showcase the great things that people in your ecosystem, people on your team, showcase the great things you're doing. And I would say manufacturing happy hour is a perfect example of that. Most of my content is featuring the insights of other leaders within the industry. So those are some of my initial thoughts on this topic. Plenty of other directions we can go, but I want to hear some of Jake's thoughts on this topic as well.
I look at it as, in the world of AI, I think the opportunity that it's giving companies is more than ever, because more authentically engaged content is going to be the separation of the future. There's always that, Chris and I are always talking on what's next. What's next? How do we as influencers, how do we help companies do the next thing? And I think in the world that we live in now, where AI is, I would say, so accessible in a lot of areas to help companies with content, the value that the individual within a company and organization for creating authentic content is going to be more than ever. Anyone now can create a pretty well written post. Anyone now can pretty much create any type of video, whether it be real or not. The one thing that is still going to be out there is companies intentionally highlighting their executives and the leaders within their organizations to hop on a camera, to hop on a podcast, to start sharing these video shorts and conversations on what matters. And I think it's one of those things where I'm very excited about AI, because AI is creating a lot of opportunity, but I'm very excited on what AI is doing, because it's going to advocate and show even more why intentional leadership and advocacy within an organization matters. And I'm really excited for why that matters, because it's one of those things is AI has gotten to the point where you can target pretty much anyone you want now with SEO. You can get your stuff out there, but the differentiation is, it's not the product, it's the people. And I think that is really where we're going to see how companies are winning deals, how they're creating opportunities, is by the people who are behind, and in a lot of cases in front of the brand.
Let's talk a little bit about the workforce here that we're trying to attract. And now you two young whippersnappers are, I think, a generation before me. So I want to get into the mindset of this young manufacturing workforce, and who is probably accustomed to going online, seeing personalities online. We all know, at least in the political world, we see our leaders are online, and the ones that are online win.
Yep.
Chris, let's start with you. What do you think today's generation looks for when they're looking for a job? Take us through kind of that sequence of what they're looking for when they're applying for a job and what they expect of their leaders.
Yeah. So, what is my generation, millennials? What are Gen Zs looking for? What are Gen Alphas maybe going to be looking for as they're entering the workforce sooner rather than later? I think we've talked at length over the past decade that these generations want to connect themselves to a company that has meaning. And in manufacturing, a lot of times is, how is the product you're manufacturing impacting people's daily lives? Are you doing something in medical device or pharmaceutical? Are you doing something in CPG, right? It's pretty easy to connect how those things that are being made are somehow part of someone else's lives on a day-to-day basis. So that's a topic that's been talked about at length in terms of what are these generations maybe more uniquely looking at than Gen X and baby boomers did in the past. I think there's a timeless element to this, though, in that at the end of the day, people want to trust the people they're going to work for. And that's what really social media is all about, or should be about, when using it strategically, because it's an opportunity, and in many cases a free opportunity, right? A lot of these platforms, sure, they have like maybe a subscription model somewhere buried in there, but this is a free tool people can use to showcase their values, the values of their company, what people are doing at their company on a regular basis, and in a way that's very authentic, right? It looks a little bit better to an extent to see someone just taking a pretty like raw video on their iPhone and things like that, versus something that's been produced for a month, 2 months at a time. There's spaces for both of these things in the world, but it's a great tool to humanize your brand. And I think that's what generations, all
Yes.
generations, are looking for in some way, shape, or form. And these younger generations, millennials, Gen Z, etc., are just very digitally native. So they're looking for that on
Mhm.
social media.
And the companies have been doing that forever. I would say though, the big thing is the manufacturing industry is just years behind what we were doing. I mean, I remember watching a ton of YouTubers. Like I'll watch more YouTube content than I will watch Netflix or Amazon content that's not as heavily budgeted produced, but I enjoy the individual creators a lot more and the storytellers that way than that. Like if I want to look at a new product, I don't go on the company's website. I go on YouTube and I look for an independent creator who's talking about it to get their thoughts rather than from the story itself. And I mean that's across the board. Like my daughter's 7 years old. She loves watching these how-to makeup videos. She's not watching a makeup video from the brand. She's watching a makeup video from a content creator that's on makeup. And it's one of those things is why? Because people connect to people and the individuals way more than they connect to the company itself.
Yeah, and here's a note from Cliff Dreyer. Couldn't agree more. People want to trust the people they work for. Jake, I think that's a really important point here. And I think, and we can start with you and go back to Chris, that a lot of CEOs they're not too familiar with the marketing space. I think the younger generations are much different, more adept on social media. But I think it's news to a CEO when you come on and you say, hey, you're going to way outperform your company page if you get out there and
Yeah.
post. I mean, I'm in marketing. We struggle with company pages, and the CEO, just puts anything out there and it like 3x's our performance.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of interviewing on your channel as well as Chris does the same, but what happens when you spotlight that CEO, and do you think they're surprised by the amount of reaction they get?
Well, I think so as well, and I think a lot of times CEOs for a long time have always been hesitant of, I don't want to be the spotlight. I want the people to be the spotlight. I want to be kind of in the back area. Like that was kind of the mindset of that
Right.
humility based, brand and marketing. But I think what a lot of companies are realizing is the people who work for the company and then the partners who are working with the company and then eventually your customers as well, they want to have a personable, approachable individual. The companies that right now are the successful ones are the ones that are very vocal and advocate. Look at the most valuable company in the world right now, Nvidia. There's a reason why I think Nvidia has um the evaluation it does today is because of Jensen and his personality. I mean, you look at there's a reason why Tesla stock holders agreed to pay an evaluation of something like $1 trillion to Elon Musk to keep him on board. Otherwise, his rest to leave is because the brand that Elon Musk has brings the evaluation of what Tesla has to do today. That's why they're paying him $1 trillion. Does he need $1 trillion? I don't know. You tell me. But it's one of those things where the what we're finding out really quickly is, it goes all the way down to celebrities and sports people. I mean, you look at what like Luka Doncic does for the Dallas Mavericks, and now he's at LA. Or like, hey, what's more popular? Who has more followings? Does LeBron James as an individual or the LA Lakers as an organization? It's LeBron, by like a factor of like 1,000. It's one of those things where people relate to people more than any higher level organization. And I think that's the surprise that when a CEO is hesitant and saying, well, no, 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 we should do this on the company page. I said, no, the company page is there and your personal page is there as well. And like, while some of the content could be similar, having thought leadership from your organization coming in and talking about the trends makes that organization a lot more, I would say, trustworthy, a lot more approachable, a lot more, I guess you could say, transparent. A lot of times, you look at the executive level and you look at it as a non-approachable group of people. But all of a sudden, when you have leadership of the organization opening up, hopping in front of a camera, becoming approachable, the mindset of those individuals and the mindset of approachability changes, which benefits the organization dramatically.
Chris, you've had so many people on your show, so many executives. Is there a difference in the manufacturing space? I mean, a lot of people come from an engineering background. They might not be as outgoing as some CEOs in other industries. What's it going to take? I mean, we've given a lot of business reasons here. What's it going to take for these executives to come out and share their story? And what have you seen from the people you've interviewed?
Greg, I think that's a good point. I do think there are elements of the manufacturing industry that maybe have folks not necessarily tending towards social media or putting themselves out there as much as other spaces. We are an industry where a lot of the leaders are folks that came up through engineering in some way, shape, or form, right? So there's a little bit of that, oh, if I just build a really great product, people are going to show up for it, right? So
Right.
yes, there are some unique elements of our industry, but I don't want to use that as an excuse. I was taking notes, Jake, as you were answering the question. I think there's an opportunity to clear up 3 misconceptions around social media and getting your personal brand out there for the benefit of the company. I think some of the misconceptions are, one is that you need to be like some bombastic personality, right? Like folks like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's been the voice of social media entrepreneurship for almost 2 decades now. Jake, you were talking about Elon Musk, clearly someone that fits that bombastic area. But if you look at it, there are a lot of people that are more reserved that have voices as well. Author Ryan Holiday, author of Ego is the Enemy, for example, and a slew of other books, all based on modern stoicism. Really, I mean, he has a more stoic personality to him, right? So you don't need to be that jump across the table, audacious personality to thrive on social media. That's one misconception. The other thing I'd say is a lot of folks are worried if they say the wrong thing, it's going to go viral and their career and their business is ruined. I can assure you, and I think Jake can echo this as well, we have created some great social media posts over the years, and sometimes the best stuff we come up with gets sucked into the ether of the algorithm right away, never to really even see the light of day. That's pretty usually what happens, like,
Yeah.
if you say something that even is just slightly off base, right? You don't need to worry about saying the wrong thing, because the cool thing about social media is you have the opportunity to engage in conversations afterwards and say, you know what, I didn't actually mean that exactly the way I said. I'm learning something here as well. So you're not going to say the wrong thing and it's not going to blow up in your face. That's the second misconception I want to clear up. And then the last thing is this attitude that, someone else on my team will do it, right? I've got the marketing team. They'll create some posts. Maybe the marketing manager will get out there and start sharing some personal posts about the company from their personal profile, right? At the end of the day, CEOs, executives need to lead by example. You need to realize that if I'm expecting other people to leverage these great digital tools to help grow my brand, get my name out in front of the workforce that I'm trying to attract and retain at my company, folks need to look in the mirror and realize that they need to take the lead. So, 3 misconceptions. You don't have to be bombastic. Don't worry about saying the wrong thing. And you got to, at some point, step up to the plate and be the person to lead by example with it. Those are 3 things that I think are worth clearing up in this case around maybe why some people hesitate to do this and how to kind of get over that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen to your point, Chris, like in terms of being yourself, being authentic. I've seen I've had Aaron Carroll on the show, president of Admiral Packaging, who just gets out there and he tells his story and he highlights people in the company, and he just is very natural and he doesn't try to be anything that he's not. Matthew Nix is on social and very much just being true to themselves and their company. Both of these folks have reported improvements in their recruiting. And I think your point too about using it as a way to show who's in your company too. Like we've got a great comment here from Rocio, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, about people also want to see someone they can relate to, women and people of color. I mean, you got three white males here, but we could easily have, if you have some of those people in your company, bring them on spotlight them with your social. But we do have a good question here, and this is from Brenda Hawley. What do you do when the CEO or top leader leaves the company and has all your followers? Jake, you mean, do you have to pay him $1 trillion like Elon, or what do you say to this?
I think it's one of those things. Diversity in your organization through leadership, I think, is a big thing that you want to look for. It's great to showcase leadership, but as well, it's great to showcase multiple people within your organization. I think it's one of those things as well. And it's a great question. It's one of those things where it needs to be both. You need to be showcasing leaderships within an organization, but you also need to be doing the same amount of investment within your company page as well. It's one of those things. Is yes, what happens if leadership leaves? I would always counter offer, which we always heard before. What happens if they stay? I think it's one of those things too. It goes back to training. Why would I train a bunch of employees if they leave? And then I ask, why aren't you training a bunch of employees when they're staying? It's very much of a two-edged sword. Yes, there are absolute downsides when you invest in a company or leadership within a company and the leadership doesn't stay. But it's one of those things. It's going to happen. It's always going to happen. It's never going to change. But when you go out there and you continually invest, that's what matters. I think it's one of those things where, yes, if you invest in leadership and leadership becomes a vocalization of the company and they leave, it's going to hurt. However, I would say it hurts even more when you have leadership in the company that's not even vocalized. It's going to hurt you a lot more that way. I would also say when you're vocalizing leadership, they're seeing value within the organization. And I think it's one of those things where when you're investing in the employees and you're advocating and you're highlighting the employees, it's because they're seeing value in it. And as well is if they're leaving because they're seeing it, they're probably leaving for other reasons other than the power that you're giving them for advocacy. I always look at embrace and highlight employees. If they're leaving, it's probably not because they're being highlighted. It's probably because there's other issues that are happening in the organization that need to be approached and looked at. And hopefully if they do leave, that gives you an opportunity to figure out what are those areas that you can fix as a company.
Chris, some thoughts?
Yeah, I really like Jake's answer in that the reality check is in there, right? People are inevitably going to leave your company at some point or another, right? Plenty of reasons that they might do that, but that is a reality of the world and the workforce we live in now. It is not common for someone to stick around the same company between the time they start until the time they retire. So I think having that realistic outlook is very important. I'm going to reference pop culture here because if we think about, let's say, a lot of the TV shows that we've seen over the years, right? Friends, Parks and Rec, Silicon Valley, The Office, you name it, right? One of the reasons people love all of those shows is because they have a great cast of characters with different personalities, diverse backgrounds, and people can relate to different characters in different ways, right? So I always try to encourage companies to not think about it as, oh, I'm going to amplify the voice of this one employee or our CEO, for example. You want to build out what I like to describe as a cast of characters that, to both of those points that were made, what happens if the person leaves? Or how do we make sure we're highlighting diverse voices, women, people of color, folks that different people can relate to? It's by creating a social media strategy, if you will, a humanized social media strategy that highlights more than one person, right? Because if you then have, let's say, you have 5 to 8 people on your team that have become kind of the forward-facing characters of your company, at some point, 1 or 2 of them is going to leave, right? Because if you're a great company and you put people on an upward trajectory, sometimes that upward trajectory is going to lead to somewhere else. But you still have, in that case, 4 to 6 people that are front-facing voices of your organization. And by the way, if that's indicative of having a good culture, that you're amplifying people, there's probably going to be someone knocking on the door. Again, back to the whole point of today's conversation about how do you attract that workforce. There's going to be someone that's like, oh, there's an open seat at company XYZ now. I would really love to get on that team. So it creates a cycle of being able to build more of those characters moving forward.
That's a great point, Chris. I love that cast of characters. All right, guys, we're at the top of the hour. If we can get just 5 more minutes out of you, we'll go down the line. Give me just 1 or 2 practical tips CEO and executive can engage online to do to drive success. And Jake, why don't we start with you?
So practical tips that a CEO could do to engage online
to drive some recruiting success.
Don't get caught up with making the perfect post. Just make the post. I think a lot of times the biggest thing I always talk to people say, I don't know what to write about. I don't know if it's good enough. I don't want to be impression. Chris said it earlier best. 90% of the content that you're going to be doing as an individual is going to get lost in the algorithm within the first 30 minutes of being posting online. How you get started is you start doing it. Stop having the fear of, is it going to be good enough, and just do it. I can say for certain, I am a 100% an individual from this. When I started on LinkedIn back in 2020, and I have every single post I have ever made on LinkedIn documented and organized with dates posted, times posted, hashtags used, what the media was. For the first year and a half or first year on LinkedIn, I was maybe averaging 500, 600 views per post. Where I was at with that. It's one of those things where when you're just starting out, it doesn't matter. But when you get in that repetition, after you've done it for the 30th or 40th time, you're finding out what's working better. You're getting more comfortable. You're writing it more. You're posting more, and people are going to see it more. If you think you're going to go out there and you're going to create 3 posts, and all of a sudden those 3 posts are going to be the shebang of the world, and you're going to all of a sudden start seeing results, that's not how social media works. That's not how branding works. It takes time. And that's the biggest thing for that. Don't look for results immediately through content, either through getting a ton of engagement or through getting the best piece of content you think is going to make out there right away.
I still think your 3 posts are going to beat the marketing teams, but
yeah, 100%. And those individual brands, and as more people follow you and advocate you, yeah. But I mean, if you're starting out and you're a CEO who has never been present, who has 200 connections on LinkedIn when your company has 12,000, yeah, you're going to see some metrics. But the big thing that I'm going to recommend is there's when you're just starting out, there's more value in you commenting on other people's posts and engaging with other posts than it is you creating posts yourself. And that's the entire thing. Robert Little, who is the president of ATI, he's a great guy. He's doing some incredible content on LinkedIn. He joked with me and he says, Jake, I make posts, but if I make a post on your comment, I'll get 20,000 views on my comment on your post rather than me making my own post. So the other big thing I was saying, if you're going out there and you're as an organization, and you're trying to convince them making their content is half of it. The other half of the content is you engaging as leader in content. That's where, in my opinion, that's the first 3 to 6 months of your strategy is not creating content. It's engaging in content.
Very nice. Chris.
I had a great answer prepared, ready to go, because Jake gave the killer advice on, hey, don't overthink the posts you're putting out there, right? So I have it queued up, right? I'm like, I got a great insight on why commenting is so important, right? I'm going to share that anyway, because I do have a good, very relevant, immediate story to this. But yeah, we're trying to think of things that lower the barrier to entry, that make it easy for someone to start engaging on social media, right? And commenting is far and away the easiest thing to do. For example, Jake posts a lot of content that feature infographics or maps to highlight different automation companies and manufacturing companies that are in a particular state or region. This past week, Jake posted a map of the United States that highlights manufacturing jobs per capita across the US. And Wisconsin is the number one state, 7.7%. So I jump in. I think the timing kind of helped. I jumped in right away in the morning and I left. In this case, I wouldn't say it's an insightful comment, but a clever comment. There's room for both on LinkedIn. But I said, just got to keep doing what I can to keep Wisconsin at the top of the list. And I did a beer emoji, beer emoji, beer emoji, right? Wisconsin, a key Wisconsin industry. And Jake, you were talking about the type of impressions you can get. Like that post has, or that comment has close to 20,000 impressions in and of itself, which is better than a bunch of the posts that I put out there on a regular basis, right? So I know engineers and folks in the manufacturing industry like metrics. Here's a very clear-cut metric to highlight why commenting, engaging in the conversations that are relevant to your industry, to what you do. That's why it's one of the quickest ways to start building up that social media presence. So your workforce, the people you're trying to reach, prospects, whomever it is, so that those people start to trust you. That's what this is all about.
Guys, thanks so much. We're at the top of the hour. I really appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on. I think it's such an invaluable topic, important topic, and invaluable advice from both of you. So thanks to everyone who joined us. Sorry, couldn't get to all the comments, but I appreciate you stopping by Thought Leaders Live, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, guys.
See ya.